was a restaurant run by Cashbeer. In high school, if Mom didn't have anything to fix my lunch, she'd give me 15 cents. They were noted for their chili, but it was hot. I would get a chili for 10 cents, and it was so hot I'd get ice cream for one nickel. There was so much grease penetrated on the floor. When we rented that store before we built 2 new stores there in Tongi, I would scrub, and you could steal some of that grease. This was a building that we bought and completely made it over. Then when Fred Angel passed away, we bought the barber shop in the building. The stores where we built are Dr. Gamble's office and half of the drugstore. We bought that old post office building too. The next store was Upper Poolall and was the most popular. I remember it better when I was a little girl and came out of the show. Although I couldn't go in there, I would tap on the window for Dad to attention. It was a visiting place for the men. And if they had that dime, they would play pool. Also, as a ledge on the store where they gossip. Anton Nerschel run that store for years. Another story I want to say, when we were looking for something to do because Ed had a bad hip, we wanted to farm, but Ed had a bad hip. We were looking for something to buy, and there was the pool hall for sale. Our girls found out that Dad was going to buy the pool hall, and did they holler. So no pool hall did we buy. The next was Evans. Where they have their business was a grocery store. This is so good. Corey rented. I knew it so well because we traded there. As Dad came in the store, Mr. Corey would say, "Hello there, P. Harper." His name was P.R. Pearson. Dad's name was Paris Regenial, and Dad would say, "Oh, hello, Esser," S-O-S Corey. They would visit a while. Then Dad would visit a bit, and then he'd leave and go to pool hall. I remember to the back was a big pot-bellied stove with chairs around. It was mostly in the wintertime. Visiting the people sat around there. Another thing was Dad picked up the groceries. I always knew there was a little sack of candy in that. They were more caring then. I mean, now our life is too fast. This is the anniversary picture of my mother and Dad when it was their 50th. Dad and Mother lived on a farm and really didn't know that many people, but they didn't want anybody to have anything on them. And I had an aunt who was Mother's sister that had no children, and she said, "I'm going to have a anniversary party on you." She brought their corsages down from Leavenworth. She had the neighbors in and had a cake made, and they were so happy. And for years afterward, they talked about that 50th anniversary party. Then we crossed the street. That would be where the First State Bank is. There was a bank of John Dorney, and on the second floor was the office of Mr. McNaughton, who was a lawyer. He was a famous old judge. Then with a place, we held a lot of dances right above the bank, square dancing. Then, now when Ed and I were married a while, they held square dances, and we, with a lot of our friends, went there every week. We had a square dance teacher, came from Lawrence, and we also square danced at homes around Tongi. Ed's dad and Mother always opened their house up to their square dancing. That was over that was over 60 years ago. Now going back to the bank was the dentist's office. Back going south. Elsie Cox was the dentist. Then the south next to the dentist's office was a livery stable. Because see, my grandparents, Grandma and Grandpa Klein, lived there where the not historical society, the senior citizens is. And I always used to walk up there, and I always run past that old livery stable. I was scared there. It later became a lumber yard run by Mr. Mitchell, Marie Black's father. It's known as a Lambert Lumber Company. Susie knows all this because she copied it from me. She's been awfully good to me. Now on 4th Street west of Dorney's Bank was a clothing store. I will never forget this store. This was Simpson's Dry Goods. It was known to me as Adam God's store, and to other people too. Why, I don't know. As you go there, you'd open a door, a bell would ring, and smell of mothballs. I did not like to go in there. Dad drugged me in there one time. I needed shoes. Their clothes were old-fashioned. I remember of how they dressed, mostly in black. To the back was their shoes. They were all out of date. I was particular because I knew I only got one pair. I had to wear them till they wore out. So I had to like them. She tried pair after pair on me, and I did not like them. She finally looked at my dad and said, "You've got a spoiled child." They never had any children. I always remember that. The next building was the telephone office, and Foster Lamming ran it. You went up a few stairs, and there was a telephone office. The girl sat with earphones and said, "Number, please." The person on the other end would say what number you wanted, and she rang it. I, living in the country, enjoyed this. There was around 6 on our line together, and when we would learn the news and a lot of gossip by listening in on that telephone. I remember Mother would say, "Get off that telephone," but I would sneak in and listen. I remember 2 ladies. They were always talking, and it always made me so mad because they talked in German. Another one later in life, Gordon Horman, that gave this old Money Valley schoolhouse to the Historical Society. His sister, they were on our line. And Genevieve said, after I was married a long time, she said, "Frances, I used to listen to you all when your husband to be called every night and said, I wish you'd hurry up and get married." This is a picture of our wedding in 1933. We were so happy. He got a job milking cows on the old Alfred Knox farm. We had gone together 3 years and always waited till he got us a job to get married. I was only 18 when I married Ed. We were so happy, times were so hard, but we got along. This is a picture of our 2 daughters, Jane Ellen Korb and Beverly Ann Korb. Jane Ellen was born February the 1st, 1936. Beverly was born January the 16th, 1939. They went to a country school, and when we moved to Tonganoxie, we were starting to run a store. They started going to the Tonganoxie grade school and then to the high school, and were there they graduated. Also, I might add in here, Ed and I were also graduates of the Tonganoxie High School. And the next was building alone. That was later in my young life. Then there was a vacant lot, still vacant. I can remember next, but where Jack's restaurant was, that's the Bad Jack's, was John Bartlett's grocery store. Then there was a store run by Alice Bohr and Mrs. Wolger. This is a store that was noted for hats they sold. As you go in, there was all hats on displays, on models of mannequin heads. A long glass mirror was on the wall. You sat in the chairs to try your hats on. On the other side of the display was materials they sold. Women always made their own clothes. To the back of the store was the First City Library, the long tables to read on, and they also checked out books. Next was Prosperous Feed Store. They bought eggs and chicken and sold grain for livestock and poultry. I don't remember who was next, but later there was a hamburger place. That's right where the 4th Street Cafe is. They also sold chili. Mr. and Mrs. Paul Seegert run there. They were noted for their food, sandwiches and chili, 10 cents apiece. Then on the next spot was the west is a Methodist church. The first church of the Methodist Episcopal Church was Topeka, June the 24th, 1869. Tonganoxie was a small village with a few devoted Christians. The first church was built for $800. It opened in December the 4th, 1871. The chapel was 20 by 30 feet with 3 windows on each side with a door in the east. Miss Aletha rode horseback to the surrounding county to raise money to buy their pews and organ. A pulpit was presented to the church by Whitseed Lamming. There was many Lammings in town, very well-to-do people that had different stores and things. The Methodist Church Ladies' Aid played a big part in raising money. Our 2 daughters were married in the old church. Then there was a few houses going west on 4th Street. The next was a Christian church, and that was where the second-hand store is. There were a few houses in between the Methodist church and the Christian church. Because of fire and loss of early church documents, knowledge of the Christian church events between 1872 and the early 1920 is very sketchy. This history of the Christian church at the end of the war between the states in 1865, they met in a meeting of unidentified persons. That persons came together for a place to worship. In 1872, they decided to incorporate the church and filed with the Secretary of State at Topeka, February 23, 1872, and be called the Christian Church of Tonganoxie. There was 19 adults, including men and women. Think how many's in that Christian church now. The number of children was not recorded. Although the records were destroyed, they did own a lot in Tongi. In June the 2nd, 1891, the church was reincorporated, and the purpose was to raise money to build a church on that lot. The earliest part of the church was 1921. The original sanctuary seated 75 people. The building had a partial basement, expanded in 1940. It was heated by a coal stove that they lit on Saturday so the building would be warm on Sunday. Then right to the old church, or the second-hand store, there was a blacksmith shop right back of it. Luther Maudlin ran it. I remember Dad taking his horses to get them shoed there. And their harness, went bad, and they would have to improvise some to put their harness together. Then the next part was a Quaker church, and that is where my heart was. Now the Friends Academy was built before the church. At that time, the town did not have a high school. The Quakers built the academy. The Quaker meeting was again too small, so they needed room. It was a large congregation that attended the meeting house. It was always a quiet meeting. They had no minister. Worship was in silence, except when the spirits moved them. After the season of silence, they drew the folding shutters that separated the men and women so each could have their own business meeting. In the meeting house, when they worshipped, the elderly men sat with their hats on. Usually, when they knelt in prayer, they took their hats off. Hats were Puritan style, coats and vests without collar, swallowtail coats, no neckties, hair combed straight back without being parted. And I think back now how my brother used to put his hair straight back, and he tried to get it to keep straight, and he'd wear a little old cap. And I wonder if he got that from that Quaker religion. No singing was allowed. On Sabbath, I'm just about to quit. On Sabbath, a Methodist minister came to visit for Quaker church. He started to sing. 2 of the elders of the church came and took him a hold of his arm and quietly escorted him out of that church. When the meeting ended, one of the elders shook hands with the next one because besides him until all was shaken. One Sabbath, the meeting house was full of women. The women had gone inside, no room for the men, so all the men stood outside. The man that was preaching gave a rousing sermon, and a snake crawled into the church. One man committed. That man who was preaching preached the serpent right out from under the Quaker meeting house. When the Friends Academy was built in 1884, it was a large two-story frame structure with a full basement. For years, it was the only source of higher education. 1886, part of the academy was used for church because they did not have enough room in the mission house. The Friends Academy not only had Quakers, but a lot of others. It was built, the Quaker Church, in 1893, and is the same church as there today. It was said in the early days, the largest church in Tonganoxie. Many meetings of the Quakers was held out in the country because it was so far to come into your church. The membership all around the church and maybe in the schools where they had these in the country was 393 members. And to think it's gone down to nothing. Going back to the Friends Academy, it graduated its first class in 1889 with 2 members. The next class was 7. To go to the school was $1.75 a month. The Tonganoxie High School was built in 1899. It was a free tuition school, and many quit the Friends Academy and went to high school. The Friends Academy closed in 1900. My father and some of his brothers and sisters went to this academy. I've written more of the story of the Quakers because my ancestors had been a part of this building of the mission houses of Quaker Church, the Friends Academy. My great-grandparents, my grandparents, my parents all took part in it and were mentioned many times in the history of this. I'm proud to have 7 generations, my family, who have lived in Tonganoxie. And now I live alone, except for my Tootsie, my poodle. People have been so good to me. B&J delivers my groceries, my mailbox is by the door, the mailman folds my little things in a newspaper or something to put in that mailbox. The people of the Methodist Church take me to church and other places. This is a picture of my husband and I, who celebrated the 100th anniversary of Tonganoxie. It was a big occasion. We had a store, and there we put old pictures of Ed's family from Germany, and his the wedding picture of his mother and dad, and pictures of my side, and then showed the old antique clock that the Korbs brought from Germany. They businesses all had their different wares out on the street to sell, and they had a dance that night, and we really enjoyed all of it. The anniversary of Ed and I on our 50th. It was at the Florence Ryford Center here in Tonganoxie. We had all our relatives, as many as could come, downstairs to a luncheon. And then upstairs in the afternoon was a reception for anybody that wanted to come. We had so many people there wishing us so good in life. Our children were there, our grandchildren were there, and many of our relatives and friends. This is a picture of our family. First one was Ed and I. We were married in 1933 at the Justice of Peace in Lawrence. On each side is our daughters and husband. To the left is Jane Ellen Korb, married to Darrell Pierce. She passed away at an early age. To the right is the youngest daughter, Beverly Ann Korb, and Pat Mellons. To the lower part is the pictures from the left is Mike Pierce and his wife, Kathy. To the middle is Tim Mellons and his wife, Kelly. To the right is Julie Ann and her husband, Andrew. This is a picture that I really cherish. This is my entire family, taken in 2003. It was held at my daughter and husband's home in North Richland, Texas. It was a great event in my life to have all of them together. We had 6 great-grandchildren there with us. We had the 3 grandchildren and their wives, and we really enjoyed all of it. We stayed there for 1 week together.